Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's This Week in Hell. First up, we're going to talk about billionaire MacKenzie Scott. She just dropped another $2 billion in charitable donations. And that's not even where she started from. Now, I'm generally against leading with who a person is married to rather than talking about that person's own achievements, but in this case it is relevant. Scott divorced Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, in 2019. And much of her current wealth was part of that settlement. Although not all of it, but, much of it. Poor Jeff, eh? He went from being a billionaire to being a billionaire. Really makes you feel for the guy, doesn't it? In that same year, she signed into a charitable initiative known as the Giving Pledge. It is a promise made by rich people to give away the majority of their wealth, either during their lifetime or after they die. So, if they don't keep that promise, no one can be mad at them after they're dead. Or at least, they'll be dead, so they won't care. It was actually founded by Bill Gates and his ex-wife Melinda and Warren Buffett. The list has mostly billionaires who signed onto it. It's quite an impressive list. You can even get removed from it if your public image falls short. We'll talk about a couple of those in a minute. However, I think it's just for show for many of the people on it. Because if you don't make good on the promise, there's really nothing they can do. It's just a pledge. There's nothing they can do legally to enforce it. It's probably something that sounded like a good idea after a few glasses of wine at a party. Notable members on that list are Elon Musk, coming in at the top, worth of $320 billion, although he might actually be worth more now. I've seen a figure saying he's closer to $400 billion. He added his name in 2012. Then you've got Mark Zuckerberg, over $201 billion at number 3, and of course the founders themselves are on there. Notable removals, as I mentioned, there have been a couple. Sam Bankman-Fried, because of all that stuff he did with people's money. And then T. Denny Sanford, who was removed after it emerged that he liked to look at pictures of very young girls. He's a bit of a banker, quite frankly. But we're not here to talk about old men trying to ease their conscience for their shady hobbies by giving money away. We're here to talk about the awesome work that MacKenzie Scott has done after taking the pledge herself. She has taken it very seriously. MacKenzie is an author, and since she took the pledge in 2019, she's given away or yielded $19.25 billion to 2,450 non-profit teams. She and her people do this through her organization Yield Giving. That leaves her currently with a net worth of about $31 billion. And she's not done. It's a wonderful thing, and she deserves all the praise she is getting for the good work she's doing, and making the others on the list look like a bunch of lazy schmucks in comparison. It's not to say many of them aren't doing good works. Of course, some of them certainly are, but some of them are just doing it for clout. Some just say, hey, I'm on the giving list. Well, what have you given? Shh. No. Later. But in the end, while it is helpful, we shouldn't need billionaires to save us. What we need is societal change at the very core of the system, because what we have right now just doesn't work. Parts of it work, but need improvement, and other things are just broken. You ever tried to ride a bike with a broken wheel? I have. It'll snap eventually. And next up today, if you use a TP-Link router, you might want to pay attention to this next story. According to the Wall Street Journal, there is a risk that they could be banned in the US next year. They've been given scrutiny lately for security concerns raised regarding the company's connection to Chinese cyber attacks. Supposed connection. That doesn't mean they are involved in anything, but they are being investigated. It might turn out to be unfounded. However, a report by Microsoft, an independent report, presumably, revealed that it has mostly TP-Link routers that were compromised in a recent password spraying hack. Password spraying being the process of attempting to gain unauthorized access to accounts by repeatedly trying the most common passwords until you just break your way through. A spokesperson for the company said, TP-Link said, like many consumer electronics brands, TP-Link systems routers have been identified as potential targets for hackers. However, there is no evidence to suggest our products are more vulnerable than those of other brands. If a ban does go ahead in the US, it could lead to a great expense and many complications for businesses and private citizens. About 64%, a little bit more than that, of routers in the US are of the TP-Link brand. I think my current one's a Netgear, so that's probably fine. If you are looking into getting a new one, a replacement or an upgrade, it might be better to resist the urge to go for the lower price and go for something not currently on the chopping block. Of course, nothing may come of it, and it could all be panic for nothing. And next up, Elon Musk. I know, he's never out of the news these days. It's currently under doubt as to whether or not Elon Musk will get the high level of security clearance he's hoping for. It seems he's being advised by lawyers from his SpaceX company not to seek the highest clearance, as it requires a higher level of scrutiny. And with his history of recreational drugs, such as ketamine, weed, allegedly LSD, and many others, it was suggested that if he tries to get the higher clearances, that he could actually lose the level he currently has. But I think that's a bit dubious. I think he'll be given whatever he needs by his man Trump. They never let the rules get in the way, and there is no reason to assume that's going to happen now. Also worth noting, they could probably justify it by saying that the reason SpaceX lawyers are advising him on this is because his employees have higher clearance and access to data that he doesn't as a part of their jobs. And there's facilities that SpaceX owns where research is being done that he's not cleared to access currently. So they might just decide, well, he owns the company, he should have access to it, and he's an advisor to the president. We'll see what happens, but I think it's going to ultimately go in his favor. Maybe I'm just being cynical. I mean, I'm always cynical, but I think my cynicism will be accurate in this case. Okay, this next one's a bit unpleasant. Rex Heuermann is the suspect in the Golgo beach killings. He's been charged with another victim. I think that makes 7 official charges now. The woman in this case being Valerie Mack. Valerie was a 24-year-old mother and escort when she was killed back in 2000. The Golgo Beach serial killings are a series of murders that spanned from 1993 until 2011. It wasn't until 2010 when the search began for Shannon Gilbert, who seemingly is not being considered a victim, although her family would argue otherwise. A search was launched after she made a panicked phone call to 911 after being forced to flee from a client's house. On the phone call, she said that someone was trying to kill her, later banging on an Oak Beach resident's door, trying to get their attention. But we'll get back to that in a little bit. Initially, Shannon's death was ruled as an accidental drowning. Her remains were found after a 19-month search. The Suffolk County Medical Examiner ruled it death by misadventure. It's a cute little term, isn't it, for someone losing their life? Misadventure. Her family, however, believe she was murdered. There's a lot of tragedy in that family. In fact, the mother was killed by one of her daughters, although that, I'm not sure how related that is to this story. It's just something that turned up while I was learning about it. This, however, this ruling began many painful years, a very long process to get real answers about what happened to Shannon. In 2014, an independent autopsy was performed which revealed damage to her hyoid bone that suggested she might have been strangled. However, in spite of this finding, her death officially remained an accident. It wasn't until 2020 when the New York Supreme Court ordered the release of Shannon's File 911 call. The Suffolk County Police had been attempting to suppress it for 10 years, and it wouldn't be until 2022, 2 years later after they'd been ordered to release it, that they actually did release it. Now, why am I going on so much about Shannon? Because, as I said, Huerman is not officially a suspect in her death. Although she fits the profile, he liked to go after prostitutes, escorts, as many of these creatures do. It's because in the course of searching for her, they unearthed the remains of a number of other victims. Initially 4 women known as the Golgo 4, all found within a quarter mile or mile of each other. I'm seeing contradictory information on the sources on that. I dug around, people are saying different things. But it's within a confined space. You can see the map, it's all very close together, which pointed to the work of a serial killer. It makes sense, that many bodies that close together. And it even made them re-examine some earlier cases. The remains of 10 people have been found in that area. Now, while there is evidence to collect Huerman, to some of them, they found DNA from Huerman's wife on a belt that was used to bind one of the victims. Although his wife had a very strong alibi for her whereabouts at the time, it does prove it came from Huerman's house. And I believe they also found notes in his home, detailed notes on the killings. So some of them can be connected to him. Others can't, so we can't be sure that he was responsible for all of them. Though it would be very weird if he wasn't. That brings us back to Shannon. It definitely looks like she could be one of his victims. As I say, she was a sex worker, she fit the profile. She was a young woman. She was working in a profession that's often considered dangerous because it's illegal. That's a whole other argument we can get into. Basically, decriminalize it is my philosophy. I have to wonder if it's the reticence to admit that she could be a suspect is because there's strong evidence for it, or if it's just it makes them look bad that it took them as long as they did, and of course seemingly suppressing evidence, allegedly, that could have got the ball rolling a lot sooner. On the recording, I believe she says that someone's trying to kill her, and yet it was ruled death by misadventure. And lastly, we say goodbye to Jill Jacobson. Jill was an actress who got her start in the 1970s. But things didn't really take off for her until the mid-1980s when she landed a 22-episode run on the show Falcon Crest. Oof. I feel old because I remember when that was originally airing. I couldn't tell you anything about the show, but I remember it being a thing that was on TV when I was young. She would then later go on to have a very busy career, getting guest parts on shows such as Quantum Leap, Newhart, Murphy Brown, even then later Castle. But as you all know by now, I am a nerd, and that's why I'm including Jill here today, because of her work in the Star Trek franchise. She appeared on one episode of The Next Generation in 1989, where she played a character in a casino, and then later she'd go on to Deep Space Nine, where she played the Bajoran character of Arroya, a restaurant owner who took a shine to Security Chief Odo. Later in that episode, Odo is... I won't reenact the whole thing, don't worry. Odo is forced to become humanoid permanently because he's a shapeshifter, he's a liquid, usually. He takes on humanoid form. And while she shows sympathy, she reminds him that there are advantages to being humanoid, or solid, as Odo's people phrase it. Jill passed away in hospital in Los Angeles, and she was 70 years old. And that brings us to the end of This Week in Hell. I could put that down now. Nothing else is scripted. I'm getting toward that point in the year now where I just kind of start to feel sort of bleak. Not to panic anyone, it's just the end of the year blues. You've heard me talk about that before. And there we are. So I'm just keeping myself busy, looking for little projects. Right now I'm essentially just thinking, oh, I want this thing. I wonder how much it would be to buy it used, or if it would be viable buying it used. My brain's decided that it needs a 3D printer. It needs a stick vacuum, like a Dyson or something, and a whole bunch of other things. Of course, one of the things I'm trying to get a really good deal on is a better camera, but that will all happen in time. Just things to keep me occupied and keep me happy. I'm kind of playing Fallout a little bit, but I don't really enjoy the game as much as I used to because they kind of messed up something this week in it. There was something I was looking forward to. But I still dip in now and again. I still have my account. I put a lot of work into the character, so he's chugging along and leveling up because it's the time of year for that. Although the last couple of boards have been kind of crap, so I don't think I'll renew it again after this, unless it's a really, really amazing one. But as I say, just things and stuff to keep me entertained. I hope you're all feeling great this week, and I hope you continue to feel great. Let me think, when does this one go up? Is it the last one for the year? No, there'll be one more to go up this year before we say goodbye to 2024. Let's hope 2025 is better, because 2024 has not been good. From start to finish, it really hasn't been good. Let's hope 2025 is gentler on every one of us. Okay, so until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves.